I think the experiences that I've had with medicine and what I have been shown have made me realize great things about myself and my existence and maybe the existence of humanity. You know, for me, it has given me like a certainty, like there's this consciousness that I am, and I'm part of a greater or bigger collective consciousness. And when I tune into that through meditation or my breath, then I am connected, or I feel consciously that I'm connected. And this is where the trust comes in, but it's not really a trust. It's sort of like a beingness in the knowing of that I am one or part of something bigger than myself.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Psychedelic Conversations. Today we have Dan Persson in the house. Welcome, Dan. So great to see you.
Thank you, Susan. It's great to be here.
It's our pleasure. So for our listeners, I'm just going to give a little bit of a context of your background. You are a psychedelic integration coach, and you've been in the space for a while, and you're very experienced with the medicines, and you kind of dabbled in different holistic and indigenous sort of traditions and different ways of understanding the medicine. So on that basis, just want to ask you, what brings you to this space? If we can learn a bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you for that introduction. What brings me to this space? I guess a curiosity for life and the experience that we have as humans. This is ultimately, I guess, like the reason why I'm sitting here today. That curiosity led me to psychedelics or plant medicine, which I started back in 2015. And I started working with a woman who we know in common, Naisha Silva, who's also hosted or has also been to this podcast. It was a curiosity to understand a bit more about my own existence, basically. So I started back in 2015, working with mainly ayahuasca, and that led me to Peru. Been to Peru twice. Been sitting in the jungle for a couple of months, and now the last couple of years I've become more interested to work with the plant medicine or the medicine from a more maybe Western way, but also remembering and honoring the traditional or the traditions that exist in South America and Latin America.
Thank you so much for sharing. What was it like to be in the jungle? Can you talk to us a little bit about that experience? Was that the first time you were immersing in such deep medicine work in the jungle? Was that your kind of first time, or you had any recreational experiences from? Because psychedelics are such a broad, family of medicines. Recreational drugs. People always dabbled in, like when they're studying or university, there's always this experience that I always speak to people and they say, oh, I was studying in university and then we went to a festival and took mushrooms, not knowing what they were. There's always these effects and some kind of experiences that people carry. And then obviously, then, they kind of go back to working with the medicines in a very different approach. So did you have anything in your past dabbling in this kind of space with the medicines, or was it the first time you just kind of thrown into the deep end?
I had one mushroom experience 10 years before I started going to retreats and meeting Anisha, which was, we had mushrooms. We ate it on with a pizza and watched cartoons for like 5 hours. And it was a lot of fun. But that was basically it. And then I had a few experiences going out, dancing, taking ecstasy. And that was it. But so I hadn't used any psychedelics at least 5 years prior to the time when I met ayahuasca, basically. And I mean, and the reason for that was, I don't know, I think, back in 2009, I started to be interested in plant medicine and especially ayahuasca. So I was watching a lot of documentaries and reading about that medicine. And so I was kind of looking for retreats. I was like looking into like going to Peru, thought it was like a bit expensive so it took a while. It took a few years actually to for me to find a venue or someone who was working with ayahuasca and was fairly close to the part of the world that I live, which is Sweden. And then that was that was it. I've never thought that it was kind of like, oh, this big thing to take something, mushrooms or whatever, and then go out for fun. And the more I started to read up on it, the more I also kind of realized that this is not really something you should do for fun, or it could be, but it has deeper effects on you, and you need to kind of like treat it with a bit of respect. So yeah, so I was so glad that I eventually found it. Yeah.
Amazing. So talk to us about your jungle experience, because I'm sure our listeners are interested. Because, at the moment, there's so much content out there, so many people sharing their experiences, like jungle experiences on videos, YouTube, blogs. Everybody's kind of pushing a lot of content out there on their jungle experience. What was it like for you?
Well, for me, it was obviously a very special experience to go to a place and isolate yourself from the world, basically, and just sit and with whatever it is that is coming up. And obviously, I mean, the reason why I did that, my intention was to, again, to kind of like be with myself, to find out more about myself, to understand myself. And obviously, you have a lot of time to do that, and you go through different stages. And normally you do a diet, or you do a diet on a plant. And so you have like a master plant that you drink, like a sort of like a lemonade or something that you drink, and then that's based on this plant. And you connect with that plant through like meditation, dreams. Occasionally we had ceremonies as well. It was a very deep, profound experience to be just by myself and connecting with the nature, and in a way which was more profound than I had expected before. So it's a great way to kind of get more in contact with yourself. And it's not something do as a holiday thing, like you go on vacation, you go to the jungle and sit. It's a lot of work, and it can be a lot of can be quite challenging. And what I really like about this tradition as well is that you can see similar traditions in other cultures, both in like Buddhism and Hinduism. You go into isolation, you meditate in caves, or in the Tibetan Buddhism, you have special locations where you sit and you meditate through months. And this is something that they have, this tradition. They also have it in South America. And so there's an idea of isolation, and also people doing vipassana these days, of being in silence and quieting the mind, connecting with your body, is a way to connect to your spirit and your higher self.
Yeah, this is amazing. So what I'm hearing from your sharing is that this is a journey that you need to really be patient and commit and give your time. It's not something that you do one weekend and then come back to your, the noisy life, because we live in the Western world with so much noise, right? So much noise. People are extremely busy. People are in the doing all the time. People are always, there is this also, it's very, very difficult to slow down, because the life we know outside of us in the Western civilized world, it's too busy. And do you see this also because you are also helping people integrate their experiences, right? You are a psychedelic integration coach. So do you see this in your clients? Do you see in people that you are helping integrate that one of the biggest challenges, they just cannot slow it down? Do you see that also?
Yeah, of course. I see it everywhere, and I can see it in myself as well sometimes. This is a constant challenge to kind of keep this connection with oneself, and it's just very easy to lose. I think that society today is built in that way that it's almost impossible to maintain that connection, because it's very heady. It's very mind centered. Um, so of course, and this is, I think, one of the main reasons why people come to try psychedelics, and also come to me to get support to integrate their psychedelic experiences. And this is why people go and like I mentioned vipassana before, but meditation retreats, yoga retreats. It's just a result of the society and the way it looks today, like how it is. So many people who come to me, I mean, they have been very stressed, have been, maybe depressed as well. Many people have been taking antidepressives, tried therapy for a long time, which hasn't worked. And then they've had a psychedelic experience, and then they need to integrate that. And many therapists today, they are very well trained. They have a lot of knowledge about the method that you use, or like the therapeutic kind of structure, and how to talk to someone and give therapy, but they don't have an experience with psychedelics. So it's like a lot of therapists today who are actually reading up on psychedelics, and there are trainings now for therapists, which is quite interesting. And but so like the people that come to me, they have maybe tried to explain to a therapist, okay, this is what I did, this is what happened, but it's very difficult for a therapist to kind of relate to something that they haven't tried themselves, because psych, the medicine works on so many different levels, and one needs to kind of have that perspective when talking to someone or giving support to someone who've had a psychedelic experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for touching on that as well, because this is so important. I think because it's becoming so trendy, everybody is interested in psychedelic-assisted therapy and integration. I think one of the most amazing concept that I heard from one of our guests of the podcast, Jonathan Sparrow. He's in he was apprenticing with a very strict tradition of Yahe and in Ecuador.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this amazing concept that he shared, and it really landed in the way that I understood it. He said, this whole integration trend is happening in the Western world. He said, in the indigenous traditions, community is the integration. Community, because they have the community. So community is the integration. And also he said, when people are having the experience in the session, like in the ceremony, it's happening all at once. If it's a skilled a healer or a facilitator, they can actually help people integrate the experience while it's happening in the session. So he says, integration happens, experience happens all at once. So obviously, this kind of speaks, this whole integration trend speaks to our consumer mind, right? In the Western world, we just want to create things, consume. And now, we had this self-help space. I've been in the self-help space for so long, and I've seen trends come and go, like cold showers, you have to journal, you have to meditate for 5 hours or whatever, like all these checklists that we go through. I feel like this is the next one. This is the next trend at the moment. And like you said, if the therapists are not experienced in the medicine, of course they will be giving checklists to do, right? Do this, like a homework. You got to do this to integrate your experience. But what I'm hearing from you, if the coach or the guide has their own experience, it's almost natural, organic, like you are attuning to the client. You are attuning with what they need in the moment. It's almost like holding hands, but not really telling them what to do, like giving them homework. Does that resonate, or am I kind of on the right track with that?
Yeah, sure. It's I found it very interesting with what you said about Jonathan and how he said about the community and also how we can integrate things or like emotions during a session or during a ceremony, if you have an experienced healer and or shaman. I think, I have a lot of trust in first of all the medicine, but also in the individual or the person who's had the session, that there's like this wisdom that we all have, and together with the medicine, things happen, and I mean it's all a process in itself to integrate, if I'm going to use that word, but at the end it's if you allow it to be and to happen, it's gonna come. What we tend to do is to go back to old routines, and when we do that without being conscious about how to take care of ourselves in a lack of a better word, then it's very easy to fall back into patterns, and then you fall back into the old stories, and then maybe some things have changed and you have had a few insights, then you can work with that. But I think the most important thing for me as a coach or someone who's supporting someone who's integrating is just to be present and is listening in to what is happening, and maybe with some questions here and there help them to um, grasp or maybe get deeper insights about their experience. Um, so I mean, I'm not doing therapy work, um, but so I mean, yeah, I guess like integrating these experiences are not really therapy.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who are doing it or like to who are psychologists and they're working with psychedelic integration as well, and they have extended experience of psychedelics. So there's another school to it as well. But I believe and I trust a lot the wisdom and the knowledge of the person, the client, that they have the resources to figure things out.
Amazing. So holding space, or the supportive, like becoming, having that therapeutic ally to become a therapeutic ally to maybe help them come back into their self-agency, come back into their own self. We talk about this, deep intelligence we have, all of us. I feel like the human beings are infinite potentials, to be honest. Like I never doubt that we lack anything inside, like within. But in the beginning, like you said, let's say maybe they lived a very limited life. Maybe their environment, their upbringing didn't allow them to be confident, ask for what they need, go out there and really live purposeful, meaningful, mindful life. Whatever reason, culture, maybe religious beliefs, maybe traditions, maybe, lack of resources, finances, like poverty, like all these things that people can have can impact their self-autonomy, right? So I feel like, I mean, you're right. I mean, the first thing I noticed with the medicine work is that people with the right guidance and with the right medicine facilitation container, I think they can really access and overcome these limiting beliefs. I think this is kind of where you resonate the most rather than the therapeutic systems, more like expanding consciousness, increasing self-awareness, and so that people can become more confident and agent, in their lives. So that's kind of what I'm, and I want to ask you a question actually. Where does your trust to medicine come from? You said you trust the medicine firstly, and then the person who's serving, because they are indigenously kind of trained to do this.
Where does it come from? Yeah, it's a very good question. I haven't really thought about where it comes from.
The reason I asked that, Dan, because people who come from a very sort of deeply connected place, people who have done a great deal of medicine work mindfully, and they have really kind of stayed on their path and committed and put in all the work, and there is a deep trust that emerges, and I hear this in a lot of guests that we speak to. There is this theme that they really trust this medicine, so that's why I'm curious.
Yeah. I guess, well, I mean, like, I love the question, first of all. Thank you so much for asking the question, because it's a question that I haven't asked myself. And so where does it come from? I think the experiences that I've had with medicine and what I have been shown have made me realize, great things about myself and my existence and maybe the existence of humanity. You know, they're all kind of subjective because they're all very individual. But for me, it has given me sort of like a certainty, like there's this consciousness that I am, and I'm part of a greater or bigger collective consciousness. And when I tune into that, consciousness in myself through meditation or through this presence in my breath, then I am connected, or I feel consciously that I'm connected. And this is where the trust comes in. It's like, but it's not really a trust. It's sort of like a beingness in the knowing of that I am one or part of something bigger than myself. It might sound a bit strange to listeners who've never, or maybe haven't had those experiences before, but I think that some of the listeners are kind of like, okay, yeah, I kind of get that. And so that trust is something that is obviously helping me, or have helped me a lot in my process, because I'm still stuck sometimes in my own stories, and I still have things that are coming up, and I'm wondering, like, where are these, feelings, fears, or feelings of shame, or sadness. I mean, where does it come from? Because I've been doing so much work with myself, and so I get into that story. It's like, yeah, but I should be somewhere else in my, on my journey. But it's just part of my process, my life. But tuning into the trust, and tuning into that love, and tuning into that feeling of that, yeah, but I am not really just my stories. I am experiencing my stories. I'm the one observing myself in this lifetime.
Yeah, that's amazing. That sounds great. It's kind of knowing that there is a grand design out there that we may not be able to comprehend, that we are part of. I think it takes away the anxiety of this mini me world, like me, and my problems and my issues. It can, yeah.
It can, but still, I mean, we have, to function in a good way. I mean, this is the way we are built. Like the human being, we have a mind, an ego, and the body, and then all the emotions connected, like they're all in our body. And I guess it's, one of the things that we need to learn is to, not attach to things, which, the ego, the self wants to do. And by cleaning, and by working, and by releasing, theoretically at least, we kind of attaching less and less.
I agree. There's a concept that we use in our own community. It's called basement decluttering. When you start the medicine, that's what you do, right? You layer by layer, you are decluttering your internal, emotional suppressed baggages and limitations and all those things that not serving really. That makes really a lot of sense. So I wanted to also take your perspective on who should avoid this medicine. Who is it, psychedelic medicines in general, who's it not for? Like who should avoid it? Do you have that kind of perspective that some people should avoid it? I'm not talking about in general, like people with mental health disorders, because recently I also understood that indigenous traditions, they don't separate people who have the mental disorder or the physical ailments. They treat them equal. It's only in the West, because of the harm reduction, because of some of the safety measures, we have to exclude people with, mental health challenges. But my question is more general, like who should avoid it, for example, because it's not just a therapeutic experience, right? It's so much more than that. It can break your perspective and break you out of conditioned mind into, like, launch you into something that person may not be able to comprehend. So in that perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think well, the first that comes to my mind is a person who is uh, under a treatment, or or who are, you know, eating other types of pills, like if it's antidepressant, SSRIs, and things like that. It obviously should avoid um, taking plant medicine. I guess, I mean, mushrooms, I mean, can be okay, I guess, but then, like, if we're talking about ayahuasca, then for sure, and stronger ones, or as well as iboga as well. It's very strong, so definitely should avoid that. Um, I mean, it's also a very good question, Susan. I think I think, I mean, this medicine is for everyone, and I think that there are people that choose not to because they don't feel like, no, but it's not really for me, and that's fine. And it's important to listen to oneself and listen to one's intuition, and not do it. But of course, I mean, like this, yeah, it has the potential to open up well, gates, and for things that can be very hard or difficult to handle or to digest, integrate as well. Like, but so I think it's important to have a bit of, a community or a support system, that people who are very also familiar with these tools, plant medicine, and because to go in alone and to explore it can be a lot. It can be, and sometimes maybe a bit too much. But it's also very subjective. What is too much?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I always thought that as well. I always thought that people who kind of maybe have the capacity, they seem to be calling it anyway, calling it in, calling the experience in. Like, I had people I spoke to, they said to me, I come from a background, I don't really like deal and look for things like that. And one day this algorithm just dropped in front of her. I think she was scrolling, and then suddenly this ayahuasca experience of somebody. I know that I'm aware that we have now in this technological age where everything is out there. But I do know that people stumble upon the medicine through their own calling, seem to do much better than another person who's been forced, bribed into by their family member or a partner or a sibling, like forced into it. They don't normally do that well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's there's that kind of like that invitation to step through the door, but one needs to feel that, okay, I want to step through that door. And I feel like it's something about, like, when you that is, you open up for something, and but if you go through that door and your heart, or like, and your intuition is not with you, then you're not completely open for it either. And a lot of, I think that a lot of the listeners uh, might also agree on this, that when taking the medicine is about, like, opening up and receiving, and then, of course, after a while one can, like, learn to navigate a bit, but it's a lot about receiving the experience and receiving the medicine. And if you're not open for it, it's creating resistance, blockages, and then the energy is not flowing. and then it's you're gonna have a what people call a bad trip, which is not really bad, but it's just another type of experience. So I think it's very important to respect people who are saying, no, this is not for me, or I'm not ready, or whatever. Okay, fine. It's very easy to go into this kind of like, oh yeah, but we can work on your fear because I can feel that you're scared of this or what. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, and people just might not be interested, or just feel like, no, but I'm happy, I feel great in my life, and why would I need to do something that potentially could change that, and then so that's perfectly fine. It's very important to respect one another, and we all have our journeys or our paths, and my path is not the same as some of my friends who I've in the beginning tried the first 5 years tried to get them to come to ceremonies.
Yeah.
They still haven't gone. They still haven't come.
Yeah, totally hear you. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I mean by on a bigger picture. That's why I ask, who is it not for? Exactly what, like you said, if it's not their calling and they're not feeling the need, then of course not. They shouldn't be, right?
Yeah.
Great. So I've got a couple more questions before we come to the end of our conversation. So one of them is, what are your observations on the future of psychedelics? Because at the moment there is this, wave of psychedelic renaissance that is happening. What are your personal observations of the future of psychedelics?
It's a very exciting times that we're living in, from therapeutic from a therapy perspective. When it comes to psychedelics, I mean the research that is being done, and it's just amazing. And no, yeah, obviously more and more people are trying it out, and I think there are many layers to this, because obviously I see we're here in Sweden within maybe 5 to 7 years. I don't know if I'm being too optimistic now, but it will be legalized probably with psilocybin. So we're going through towards that, right? And I know also in England you have a lot of research is being done, and so we're moving towards that. And I think when it gets legalized, it's probably gonna create a subculture, or the underground movement that now exists, where people do these kind of ceremonies or sessions, is gonna grow, because when something gets legalized, the people who have seen this as a drug now understand that, oh, it's legalized, you can actually see the benefits of this. People have done research on it, etc., etc. So more and more people will want to try, and this is why it's very important to where we are right now, to kind of cement or to establish the culture around psychedelics, because we in the West, we don't have a culture around psychedelics. We don't have that tradition. I was speaking to a person that I met who studies history and studying like the history of psychedelics here in Sweden on the north, and there's like this myth about the Vikings that they ate psychedelics before going into battles. It's not true. This is just taken from something, apparently. And the Sami people, the natives that we have, the indigenous people that we have in the north here, there's not many records, or if any records at all, that they used mushrooms or psychedelics. Maybe in Siberia, yes, with Amanita muscaria, but not anything here in Sweden. So what I want to say with that is that we don't have a culture, we don't have that background. So we're creating this culture now. And that's why it's very important that we, I guess, like, yeah, people who have been to South America, or are more kind of inclined to work in that way, that we kind of take those values and bring them here. And then obviously we can mix them with our values here in the West as well. But it's important to create that culture because it's something that is growing, and I think it's going to be a part of our societies for decades to come. And if we look at the darker side of this culture, potentially, as you have people running around and you have doing it just for fun, and I'm not particularly saying that it's something wrong with doing that. It's just that it has the risk for harm is bigger. Like, if you don't do it under a secure, safe setting. So if you're not experienced and then you go and take acid and then 2 grams of mushrooms, I mean, like, it's potentially dangerous for you.
Yeah, totally with you. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that. So as my last question, your work, how do you support people, and your mission, your purpose here with your work? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I support people by helping them, by helping people to integrate the psychedelic experience. I also do other type of work when it comes to like men's work and things like that. But when it comes to psychedelics, it's more related to integration. I've also co-hosted and co-facilitated ceremonies, and it's something that is I feel very important as well to do. Yeah, I guess I'm very much surrounded by people who are in different ways helping people to find themselves.
Amazing. Thank you so much for everything you shared today. And where can our listeners connect with you? Where can they find you? Are you on social media?
I am on social media. I'm not so active, but I have Instagram, and it's very possible where you can always send an email as well.
Fantastic.
See if we can post that.
Yeah, we'll have those in the show notes. Thank you so much, Dan. This has been amazing to find out your work and get to know you, so our listeners can meet you as well in this way. And yeah, we'll hope to have you back sometime soon to follow up. And all the best in everything you do.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Susan, for inviting me, and thank you for your work that you're doing, having this podcast. I'm sure it helps a lot of people, and it's very courageous to have the conversations that you have with me and many others around it. So thank you for creating the platform.
Thank you so much for your feedback. Appreciate it. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Please do comment, share, ask questions. You can get in touch with Dan, and don't be shy. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye for now.